Hi again then guys, and welcome to a very highly requested review for a car which is kind of an updated version, well it is an updated version of an existing model or models that we've already looked at in Gran Turismo 6, the Alpine Vision GT program. These are cars which I'm no stranger from saying I'm not a fan of. I said that back then and I still feel that way. However, going into this one, my hopes were not necessarily high or low, but they were certainly more peaked. My interest was more peaked because of how many recommendations and requests I had to take a look at the car. And this is actually the first time I've driven the car since getting the game, because there are still vehicles that I just haven't driven yet, haven't got around to reviewing them yet, etc, etc. Now this car is significantly better straight away in terms of sheer spec than its siblings, because as on Gran Turismo 6 goes to show, having around 400 horsepower or so and being whatever the weight was back then, I don't recall, about 900 kilos I think, something like that, did not necessarily make it a great competition car. I know there were people who liked to use it, and under some circumstances it could win in racing, but I never had much success with it. I found that there were far better cars at that PP level, and the fact that you could barely even tune or upgrade it didn't really help the image for me. I don't dislike Alpine, they do make some very, very good cars. I love some of their older Le Mans cars, but this one for me just never really did it. It never lived up, I think, to the look, because it is a stunning looking car. But the performance for me was just never really there. So this one could potentially address that issue and make me, who knows, even love the car. So is that the case? And beyond my opinion, should you check it out? Well, yeah. In short, so I'll see you next time, but obviously, seriously, this car is immediately a lot better than the existing models, because as I said, the spec is stronger. It's got almost 600 horsepower, over 400 pound-feet of torque. It still only weighs 930 kilos, which is similar to an LMP prototype, of course, and the horsepower per tonne is a very healthy 639. But the best thing of all, the single greatest thing about this car, even compared to the other two models, has nothing to do with its performance and nothing to do with its spec, and that is the class. It is in Group 1. How brilliant is that? We can finally talk about a car that has this kind of insane performance that you can actually use. How nice a change is that in the world of Gran Turismo Sport, where so many cars are relegated to the utterly useless Group X, and even the other two Alpines still are. Thankfully though, who cares about them, because this is a far better machine. I love the closed canopy, incidentally. I think it looks way better, almost looks like some kind of solar powered electric car, but it ain't electric, that's for sure, because this thing can be tuned up to nearly 1,000 horsepower and it can drop to under 800 kilos. Now, I noted down those specs, which I usually wouldn't talk about as much in the video, and one in particular is the horsepower per tonne, because I was curious as to what it would be in its fully tuned form. And when I worked it out, it's 1,175. That is incredible. That's borderline Red Bull territory in some cases, or even Tomahawk territory. That's incredible from a car like this. Now, of course, you're very rarely going to have that kind of output in an actual race because of balance of performance, but it's nice to know that it's there if you want it, or in online lobbies, etc. Now, with that all being in mind, it costs 1 million credits. Not too much of a surprise there. So should you buy it, or should you wait to win it? Well, to some degree, this is one of those models which I think you could potentially actually spend 1 million on and not be disappointed, because there are some cars which for sure you could say, well, just wait to win it, you don't really need it now, and then some other ones you should definitely get as soon as possible. Something like a GTR, for instance. It's so cheap in comparison to many of the others, and has a great versatile level of range. This one, I would say for the right person, is definitely a must-buy. Now for me, it's still not one of the vehicles that I plan to use all the time, but as you can see from the lap times in this video, it is certainly no slouch. This car is extremely fast. The top-end speed, well, it takes no time at all to get there. In fact, I had to recalibrate the gearbox on my second run of driving the car because it wasn't long enough. It got through the gears so quickly, even with full downforce, because this one that I'm driving here is in fully tuned form. Well over 900 horsepower. As you can see, top end speed is incredible. So what about the handling? Because that's what you're wondering about. A rear engine, rear wheel drive Alpine. I wasn't a huge fan of the handling on them already. They were good, but I just didn't personally like them that much. This one, it requires careful attention. If you set up the car in a very specific way, then it will serve you very well, extremely well in fact. It can be a dominant force for sure. If you set it up a little bit off, it will let you know about it, because there is a very fine line between nimble and twitchy. And it really is so easy for most cars, even especially mid-engine or rear-wheel drive, rear-engine ones in particular, to go over that line and go from being brilliant and very useful and very competitive to being almost undrivable, very anti-beginner, if you want to think of it that way, a professional car for sure. But even then, you could say it's a professional car, or you could just say it's a bad car, because sometimes cars can appear to have just bad handling, straight up bad. But more often than not, you can fix that. You can tune it, you can get around those issues, you can learn how to drive a different kind of drivetrain, and for many drivers that will be the case here. You don't drive that many rear-engine, rear-wheel drive cars in the Gran Turismo franchise unless you go into stuff like some old-school Subaru 360, which most of us aren't going to, or, more likely, a Roof or a Porsche. So with that in mind, you should go into this car expecting to have to use a different driving style, and in particular I would actually recommend having all three of your differential settings as low as possible. That will make a huge difference, and this car that I'm running here with, as I said, well over 900 horses, under 800 kilos, is running without any camber or traction control. So it can be done. You can definitely get this thing to fly through corners in a surprisingly controlled way, as long as you have that diff setup on 555. Now, of course, you could change that. I'm sure there are other people who prefer different setups, but for me, that made the world of difference. So this is a car which demands respect, for sure. It has so much more usability than the Vision GTs in Gran Turismo 6 from Alpine, and I would say definitely from the ones in this game as well, because if nothing else, you can't race them, apart from one-make racing. Whereas this thing, you can take it up against Vision GTs, you can take it up against real Le Mans cars, infinitely more usable. So if you do like the Alpine cars already, I guarantee you're going to love this one. And maybe if you're like me and you're not as much of a fan, you might not love it. I still don't love the car, but it's a very useful tool, and I have to respect just how fast this thing is. So that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.